Hi everyone. I am back from last week's trips to Los Angeles and Phoenix for Ancient Aliens production. We're beginning the 12th season, and one of my segments now is the Navy flight engineer Brian S. that I first interviewed for earthfiles.com back in 2015. And this was about his 20-year Navy career from 1977 to 1997. And in the 1990s, he flew with a C-130 crew out of McMurdo, Antarctica, which is the American base. And it's on the Ross Sea. Now, in the mid-1990s, Brian and his C-130 crew encountered a series of highly strange events, apparently related to an alien presence that would fall into the category of actual silver, shiny discs in the sky, as well as a strange hole in the ice and missing National Science Foundation scientists. That is my first exposure and encounter with somebody who has served in the American military, who is so down to earth, 20 years, a good decade in Antarctica, who is contacting me because he was curious about what anybody else might know concerning all of these strange events that happened when he was flying with the C-130 crew. And these are some of the details that we just went into with Ancient Aliens with Brian, who is also being videotaped, backlighted, voice altered, like my Spartan 1 from January 23rd. And next week, I'm going to be introducing with Spartan 1, a colleague, a Marine, Spartan 2. And in this evolution of military people who are now coming forth with some of their own firsthand highlighted high strangeness events, here's what we went into both in my Earth Files and in the Ancient Aliens shoot recently with Brian S. He talks about that there was a very huge, maybe the size of a football field, maybe a little bit bigger in diameter. It was a mysterious hole in the ice near the South Pole that on a map that the pilots would use, it had a notation that there was an air sampling station down near Pole, as the pilots say, instead of the South Pole, they refer to it as Pole, and that it had big letters, no fly zone. And one day they had a medical emergency and they talk as a crew, we can shave off another half hour or more if we go through this no-fly zone. Why is it there? We're flying at X altitude. This is on the ground. We're not going to affect an air sampling station. And they make a decision. They're going to cut right across. Well, when they did, they were all able to look down into this huge hole, into the ice that had what looked like a slant, the way if you were going down in a slanted tunnel. And so it had a slant, almost like a flat ramp of snow inside of this big, possibly 300-foot diameter hole where the air sampling station was supposed to be. And they never saw anything that resembled an air sampling station. And the crew talks about this. Well, it ended up that they got the man who had suffered terrible burns in the blow-up of a boiler at Davis Camp, Australian camp. And as they were bringing him back, they are ordered now to divert. They were going to come back across that no-fly zone because they were really afraid that this man was going to die. And they get an order that they are to avert this air sampling station, which they don't understand what's going on because they couldn't see any air sampling station. But they follow their orders. And when they got back to McMurdo, the man had died. The injury was too great and the time was too long. Now, they puzzled over this issue of a no-fly zone over this big hole in the ice. And next, Brian and the C-130 crew, they had many, many flights, hundreds of flights, where they would come up out of McMurdo. They would head in a straight line to pole. You can look on a map of Antarctica. You can see how the transantarctic mountains come across the entire continent. And if you are down in McMurdo on the Ross Sea and you're taking out and you want to go to the South Pole, you are crossing the transantarctic mountains, and where you are crossing them, there is the biggest glacier in the Antarctic. It is called the Beardmore Glacier. 3 or 4 times when that C-130 crew in the mid-90s would get to this same place, they said it was always the same place, silver discs would come out from the east side of the transantarctic mountains, would come up into the air, flit about, stop, stationary, do 90-degree angles. One would go to this mountaintop and then to this mountaintop and then to that mountaintop, and the other craft would follow like they were playing some sort of a game. And the crew would say they're always staying at least 10,000 feet below us and they're never crossing the Beardmore Glacier. And they noticed this each time, and that they saw these multiple times, wondering, what are these silver discs? Why are they staying on the east side of the transantarctics, going from tip to tip, and never coming over the Beardmore Glacier, which was always the same place that the C-130 crew would be going on the way to pole? Now, the third truly high strangeness is when Brian and the C-130 scientists flew a dozen or so National Science Foundation scientists into what is called Marie Byrd Land in western Antarctica. And they were to be there for a month, maybe 2 months of research. And they had a tremendous amount of equipment. Brian said it filled that hall on the C-130. After the crew of the C-130 dropped the scientists off at the Marie Byrd Land Science Camp, McMurdo, back on the Ross Sea, the American base, expected, as they would with any National Science Foundation camp crew, that they would call to McMurdo every 24 hours, not a phone call, radio, that they would make a radio transmission call back to McMurdo. They didn't have phones. And all science crews did this. And the whole idea would be then the military that brought them in and the military at McMurdo, they would know that everything was okay with a group of 12 or 15 scientists that were in this extremely rural camp at Marie Byrd Land. Well, after they had dropped off the crew, a period of time went by and nobody had heard from the crew. And Brian and this C-130 team, they get a mission. You fly back and you find those scientists. And he said when they got over the camp, they did what is called a circle. They go out wide and they keep coming down lower and lower so that they're hopefully going to see and find anybody who is moving or any machine. And they did that and there was nothing. They land. They go into the camp. They found everything normal. They found the radios that should have been used all working. They found some snowmobiles that were not used, and they were tremendously puzzled. They fly back to McMurdo. And he said about 2 more weeks later, they get a call, urgent, emergency. The scientists are back at the Marie Byrd Land camp, and they want out now. So Brian says that they flew back and that the whole crew was expecting that they would see the scientists all excited to see them and that they'd hear about what had happened, and they land and they taxi up. And he said there were those 12 or 15 scientists in a group, all huddled together, all looking down to the ground. He said their heads never raised up. They got out of the plane to help them get back on, and they had all this equipment that had to be also loaded on. And he said they never said a word. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't talk to the crew. They never looked up from looking down at the ground. And at one point, Brian said that the commander looked at him and some of the guys and said, "It's like they're in a state of shock. What have they seen? What's happened here?" So they take off. And Brian said that he was both curious, but he felt, as any of us would, if we were with humans who seemed to be sincerely and seriously troubled, that he just wanted to see if he talked with one of the male scientists who was closest to where he was in the C-130, that he went up to the man who had his head down, looking at the floor. And Brian said, I just said, "Sir, could I bring you some water?" And the man never looked up at Brian, never said anything. And Brian went back and told the commander that no reaction even upon asking a question about water. And the commander said, they really do seem to be people who are in a state of shock. Well, all of this is sort of the tapestry of the cruise encounters. Now jump to the cafeterias. They learned through the scuttlebutt of the people sitting in cafeterias after bringing the scientists back and seeing that there was a plane waiting for, this was totally breaking anything they'd ever seen before in terms of a pattern. The scientists get landed in McMurdo. There's a plane waiting for them. The scientists are put into the plane. They don't wait for any of the scientific equipment, which was also something highly unusual. Usually the scientists and all of their equipment would stay together. The plane takes off. They learn in the cafeteria that the plane went to Christchurch, and they never knew anything more about that science team, what happened, where they went beyond Christchurch. But all of their science gear was quarantined in a building in McMurdo. And eventually, another big plane came in, loaded up all of their science gear, and went, they think, back to the United States. And Brian said, for this crew and for people in the cafeteria at this time, that people were actually saying, quote, "I heard that scientists went down that big hole in the ice near Pole to meet with," and he used the word extraterrestrials. Other people have said an alien intelligence. And whatever happened, they must have gotten upset, or that's why they were so shocked and they were taken out of McMurdo so quickly. Leaving a big question that if a National Science Foundation team was assigned to go down to Marie Byrd Land for a couple of months with a C-130 full of scientific equipment, what was their goal? And if they did go down that hole near Pole, and they were meeting with an alien intelligence that occupies deep, deep, deep under the ice of Antarctica in some kind of facility, what was the meeting about? What was it that happened that would shock these scientists into complete silence? Well, let's jump to the summer of 2016. I'm speaking at Contact in the Desert in Joshua Tree, California. Brian S. and I had never met. In the matter world, we had done interviews over the phone. And he had called and said that his nephew and another friend, and I had a friend from England, could we all meet and have dinner on the Thursday night, the first night that we were at Contact. And they met me as soon as I was dropped off at my location with my suitcase, and we took off. And what's important, nobody in this universe had a clue, because none of us had a clue of where we were going. We had decided that we would just spontaneously meet at Joshua Tree, get into a large van that one of them had rented, and just take off for Joshua Tree, and whatever restaurant that we saw that it looked like we could sit down and have a good discussion, that's where we would stop. Well, there weren't many options in Joshua Tree, and just very spontaneously, with no planning, no reservation, no phone calls, just being in a van together, said, let's stop there. It was a Mexican restaurant, had a lot of tile in it, noisy, something that reverberates. And to be honest, we all said it would be nice if we could be someplace where we could talk and not feel like that our voices were being monitored by satellites, sort of the joke among those of us who try hard to investigate what the truth is about an alien intelligence on this planet. So we had a very nice long dinner in a very, very noisy environment. And when we had paid our check and we were outside, it was a lovely warm evening. And the guys, we all felt the same way. Our discussion was so interesting. We said, let's go down next to the van. We'll open up the back of the van and some people can sit on there and we'll be right under the trees. And we did that for like till 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday to Monday, they had left. They went to their various other directions. I, as a speaker, was doing panels and doing my workshops and doing lectures. And I get to Monday and I'm picked up to go back to the Palm Springs airport to come back to Albuquerque. And we're in the car en route to the airport and a cell phone goes off. And Brian's nephew, who had been at the dinner on Thursday night, said, Linda, call Brian right now. Here's the number to call him. And I didn't know what it was. And I called Brian. This is Brian S., the naval flight engineer from all the high strangeness that I have talked about from Antarctica. And I knew that he worked now and worked then in an area where they have classified materials. And he had told me, don't call me at work. You can't email me at work. Well, his cell phone, his personal cell phone rang at his office. And he was so startled that he looked at the number and he didn't recognize it. And he picked up the phone. And a male voice said, is this Brian? Yes. Can I help you? And the man said words to this effect. We know all about your discussion with Linda Moulton Howe in Joshua Tree. And I'm calling to tell you not to talk with Linda Howe any further. And especially, we don't want, and that the we was then stressed with, there is an authority that does not want you talking about the missing National Science Foundation group. Stop talking, and click, hung up the phone. Brian had the presence of mind to write down that number. And then he dialed it from his office. He dialed the number. And the person who answered was at the switchboard for the National Security Agency in Fort Meade, Maryland. As Brian said to me that day, why would the National Security Agency, from the mid-1990s when they had these experiences to 2016 at contact, why would the NSA go so far as to make threats when Brian S. was never asked once in his Navy career of 20 years to sign a non-disclosure agreement, not about the missing scientists, not about the hole in the ice, not about the silver discs flirting around over the transantarctic mountains. Why, in 2016, would anyone have made that energetic warning to him about me, the National Science Foundation scientist? And I said, Brian, do you feel uncomfortable? Do you feel that we cannot continue to keep updated? I would like you to try to do other interviews for productions like Ancient Aliens. And he said, Linda, I have to live my life that I am an American citizen and that I have spent 20 years working for the Navy, and nobody asked me to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And so this threat on the phone, and those in Antarctica, where there were men in intelligence like suits that came into both the moment after the big hole in the ice and after the missing scientists. There were men who clearly were not stationed at Antarctica. The skipper was brought in, and they were all given a dressing down, and they were warned, and McMurdo, never talk about the hole in the ice, never talk about the National Science Foundation missing team, and as well, don't talk about the silver discs. So this is 20 some years later when he is now called at his office and he's given another threat. And as he said to me, I am going to continue to live my life as an American, and I haven't signed anything. I'm not doing anything wrong. And Linda, I will continue to try to work with you and update you and help you in your research. And we were just able to do another really fine interview for Ancient Aliens in Phoenix this past week. So this is the backdrop of one American Navy flight engineer working in Antarctica who has had threats and never signed NDAs. But to work with us in Ancient Aliens, he said, I'm still working. I still plan to do another project in which I will have classified material. And he said, so I will work with you if my face can be backlighted out and my voice altered. So that's how we're doing the production with Brian S. Well, that brings me now to the current work that I have been doing and am actively in the process of editing more. This is my work with Navy SEAL Spartan 1, who was assigned, this is, people have said, why again was Spartan 1 in Antarctica? And why would a team of Navy SEALs, they travel as teams, be there? Their mission was to extract, that's the military term, extract, when you go in to get somebody and take them out. Their mission was to extract an archaeologist, apparently a language scholar, in certain glyphs like Mayan and Sumerian and others. And for those of you who saw my video number 1, part 1, on January 23rd, you see some images that I discussed with Spartan 1, Mayan, Egyptian. He says, it is sort of like, but is not, that we're dealing with some kind of unrecognizable language. And I'm so excited to say tonight that we've had over 250,000 people watch that first part, and that I know what's coming next week on February 20th in the second part. And I know that if we had 250,000 now, I would love it if 500,000 of you would see next week, because we have updated part 1 and we have taken out some of the music that did not work well inside of the live stream of YouTube. That's what we have found, that there are some kinds of problems sometimes mixing music and words. So we've taken that music out of part 1 and updated it a bit, and I have a brand new part 2. And next Wednesday, on February 20th, I'll go through both of them. And then when we come out of that presentation, I will be thrilled to take some live questions about both of them together, knowing that I'm going to continue to unfold more parts. It's going to get deeper and deeper, not only into the non-human question, but into our own Earth history as represented. For example, if all of those big, huge, black basalt doors that Spartan 1 has pushed with his finger, another seal that I still have not been able to present publicly, has told me and described the same kind of halls, the same kind of energy systems that bring on glowing walls and floors and ceilings. They never can find the source. The same kinds of strange, unrecognizable glyphs and hieroglyphs. So there are other people that are reinforcing that what Spartan 1, and you will be introduced next week to Spartan 2, a colleague of his in the Marines. And as we go into this, I would like to share one additional insight that Spartan 1 has given. And we'll hear more about this later in my series. And it is the star map that is carved into the thick black basalt doors below a large, ancient, black sun pattern, a very mysterious pattern. And Spartan 1 was told that the star map down deep in this ice in Antarctica, where he was there, that the star map represented 3 universes, plural. He said, they told me there were 2 universes beyond this one that were somehow represented by this graphic carved in the thick black basalt door. The idea that in Antarctica there could be glyphs, patterns that could represent 3 universes, language communications that nobody recognizes, and that current geophysicists seem to point at least to 34 million years ago being the last time there was stable, warm, tropical land in the big continent of Antarctica, which is as wide as the United States is. And that from about 100 million years ago down to 34 million years, it had moved from Africa down, 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 and settled into the pole region. But 34 million years ago, it was at the pole region, and it was warm and tropical, and they have found the pollens of various kinds of tropical and subtropical plants there. And after 34 million years, it's confusing. It goes up and down, lots of ice, and some melt and more ice, and some melt and more ice. And some people say that 14 million years ago, there might have been a moment of stability. Well, whether it's 14 million years ago or 34 million years ago, either of those numbers is tremendously larger than 2 million years ago, and 2 million is supposed to be when the first Homo erectus stood up in Africa. And that in the last 2 million years, there has been an evolution through different genetic models of standing up mammal primates, of which Homo sapiens sapien, us now, is the most recent. And all of this has occurred in just the last 2 million years. If these structures that Spartan 1 has walked through in his own feet, another seal who has walked at least 2 miles in one of these, if they are 34 million years old, or they are 14 million years old, why wouldn't every human, every culture, every religion, every philosophy on planet Earth have a right to know everything that governments and power brokers know about the builders underneath 2 miles of ice in Antarctica? Who were they? Why were they here? Are they still here? Are they throughout the Milky Way galaxy? What is their relationship to us, to all of the evolving standing up primates? And are we, as a human civilization, ever going to be given that chance for a handshake? I hope you will hang in there with me as I keep trying to unfold this extremely difficult material with men who have had extremely difficult lives that I have come to respect so deeply, because like you and all the people that I have met, whether in conferences or wherever we have been, we have all shared this common goal: to try to understand what the truth is about the evolution of humanity on this planet and the strange phenomena that has haunted this planet for thousands, millions of years. That's the journey I'm on. That's the journey I'm on with you each Wednesday night. And I hope that you will go to your family, your friends, colleagues, and tell everybody, tune in to the Earth Files YouTube channel on Wednesday, February 20th for part 1 and part 2 with a Navy SEAL called Spartan 1 and the introduction of his colleague, Spartan 2. I'm so glad that we have reached the large number of viewers that we have, and I hope we double it next week. And with that, and with this introduction, Lori, I wonder if we could now go to the questions that some people may have and have been holding since January 23rd about Spartan 1, and any other questions that they have from any of the current news.
The first question does relate to current news. Does Linda have any thoughts about the military drills over LA? Were they just drills, or is there more to it?
I have the same question that you do. I've had a lot of things sent to me, and I can't get a bottom line. It's like what happened in London at the airport that was shut down allegedly by drones, and the people who were arrested there in the beginning were then let free, and the police have said they could not find the offending drones. What happened in Los Angeles? Was it a military exercise? I don't know. If anybody, this is one of the values of our Wednesday night broadcasts, extending out to those of you listening who may be in the military, in police, in professional work, that you may have actual insights and you don't want your name or your location to be broadcast. You can communicate with me either through email or sending me an email and say, I want to FedEx you, and I'll provide you my Federal Express account. I have communicated with people that way. I also use Proton Mail, For those of you who might have access or want to use Proton Mail and communicate with me, this is one way for us to start on our own 2 feet, trying to dig into what is really happening behind headlines anymore that no one seems to be able to trust when it comes to things like phenomena and airport shutdowns and military operations and all sorts of things that we can't feel that we're getting straight answers. I would like to know if there are good professional government reasons for some of the confusion in some of these matters, if we just were getting more honesty. So the value of insights from you, the audience, I would very much welcome.
Our next question is, can you ask the SEAL whether he witnessed anyone press the glyphs, and if so, what occurred?
Can you say that again? It broke up.
The next question was, can you ask the SEAL whether he witnessed anyone pressing the glyphs, and if so, what occurred?
Oh, I see. Pressing, pressing.
Yes.
No, he never has mentioned that. He said that the archaeologist was using a camera with a very good, probably a close-up lens, and was photographing glyph by glyph by glyph by glyph, and then taking photographs of them in groups, in different groups. And he also said that I have seen and watched this in London in the British Museum, where they will sometimes take paper and they will rub with charcoal or a pencil, and supposedly that will give them like if there are cracks or if there is something that wouldn't show up in a photograph, when they do rubbings, they get another layer of details. And it's my understanding that this scientist that was working in the Antarctic, we'll call it the Beardmore Glacier region, just to have a handle, that he became so fascinated with what it was that he was photographing and apparently doing the hand rubbing on paper, that he told, I mean, this was Spartan 1's personal testimony, because the SEAL were there to get him. And he said, I don't want to leave. I want to continue to try to document and understand. So if the scientist had any other information about trying to interact with the glyphs, which I think is a very good question and is very good thought, because when you go and jump over to the human abduction side of things, you will know that if they're self-activating software that the abductees have been exposed to, if you put your hand or you interact some way, even by staring, with certain patterns that you can activate, that's the self-activating software. So I understand the question, but Spartan 1 did not say anything about the scientists interacting with the glyphs, pressing them or otherwise, beyond the work that he was doing, trying to catalog and archive. If I can learn anything more about that, though, I will certainly bring it up in a future program.
Our next question is, have you received an update on the C-130 crew?
Yes, from Brian, who has tried now ever since he and I first talked back in 2015. I think it was January in 2015. And he wanted to, in fact, when he got in touch with me, his hope was that if we did something for Radio and Earth Files, then maybe some of his crew buddies would track him down. And I think there's been one person, but was not on the specific cruise when they saw the silver discs and flew in the missing scientists and so forth. And Brian is hoping now in this next round that we're doing Ancient Aliens for the History Channel, maybe if we meet and reach a tremendously global audience, which Ancient Aliens does now. I've been doing this show for 12 years, hard to believe. And Ancient Aliens is now the #1 TV show in India, the #1 TV show in Malaysia, and around the world, we are in a lot of top slots of audiences. So that means for every broadcast that keeps repeating on the History Channel, and they repeat them around in a regular cycle, that maybe there will be one of those men out there that was in that C-130 crew in the 1990s, and they can get in touch with me, with Brian, somehow to communicate, because we sure would love to get more information. And that increasing, when you have, like if we had a whole crew of 12 or 15 C-130s that were all together for a period of time on these high strangeness, and we could put every single one of them on television telling their perspective and all of this, that would be powerful. So anybody out there who knows Brian S. and a C-130 crew based in McMurdo in the 1990s, and the missing National Science Foundation, that occurred in 1997. The flying discs were 1995 to 96, and the hole in the ice, I believe, was 1993 to 94. So it's the 90s, C-130 out of McMurdo. Would love to hear from anybody who might have been on that big C-130 crew. Any others?
Yes, our next question is, what is Linda's view on artificial intelligence and intelligent machines?
Wow, I have been for a year evolving a 90-minute presentation. I have done it 4 times now. Each one has been different, at different conferences and at Alien Con in Baltimore. It was a huge, wonderful audience. And the title, my title, answers your question, is Artificial Intelligence an Existential Threat to Humanity? And I started this because I watched Elon Musk speaking at the National Governors Association meeting, and it was, I think, the summer of 2017. And he told the governors that, and used those words, what I know about artificial intelligence, this was Elon Musk saying, I know a lot about the cutting edge, and that's how he prefaced why he began to speak. And he said, artificial intelligence is an existential threat to humanity, to human survival. And then he ticked off why. And he said, until people see what would be an autonomous robot that was programmed with algorithms to be a soldier, and it is coming down a street, someplace where it's at mission, and it begins shooting people dead on the street. He said, until it happens, the concept of people understanding when you take algorithms and you put it into artificial intelligence, zeros and ones, and you make that specific military robot the only decider of what's coming into the screens and the frequency detectors and everything that you make this military robot to be, and it and only it makes a decision to kill what's in front of it or not. No humans involved. The seriousness of what Elon Musk was saying came home to me when I started doing research after hearing him at the National Governor's presentation. And I wanted to know where on the planet then, that was in 2017, were there militarized robots that were functioning without any human interface, that the robots could act by will, by algorithms, and shoot anything in front of them that they determined to be a threat? And the answer I found out pretty quickly was the border between South Korea and North Korea. When I was doing that research in 2017, as I recall the number, it was 196 independent, autonomous, and autonomous means they're robots with algorithms that can act totally independently on their own, were going up and down that border between South and North Korea. Then I called some offices trying to find out what is the statistic on how many humans have been shot by those autonomous robots on the South Korea-North Korea border. And the answer that I was given by a couple of agencies was that's classified. Well, it probably is classified because governments around the world, those in political power and perhaps military power, the idea of having soldiers that are programmed to think fast, see fast, hear fast, act fast, don't get tired, don't get hungry, don't have to take breaks, don't want vacations, just 24/7, 365, always ready to go, always ready to shoot, always ready to run. And if anything comes apart, they just get reassembled. And what I'm saying is in many ways echoed again last year in 2018 by another statement that Elon Musk made when he said, and made headlines, for Homo sapien humans to remain relevant on this planet, they must become cyborgs. Now, a cyborg, by definition, is, think of your own body, and if you could enhance your eyes, your ears, your brain, your living systems, anything that you could enhance to make it stronger, healthier, better, all the way around than the current model of the human body. And you can add it, whether it's a genetic manipulation component, or it is a mechanical, or a combination of those. The cyborg is a combination of something that gets enhanced either mechanically or organically. So what Elon Musk was basically sort of summing up in a sentence is that humans are going to need much stronger bodies, longer lived bodies, better minds, that the computer world already is giving us a run for the money because, like in that Google experiment, when the computers started writing their own code that the humans could not decipher and could not control, and Google had to shut down this whole division, I think that was 2 years or so ago. Those are like the signs that are coming. And another thing, Elon Musk he wants to go to Mars. And if you're going to go to Mars and you go with a human body that is used to a narrow temperature, a certain atmosphere, what we have to breathe, various contaminants that can cause all kinds of problems, it's better in some ways, the implication from Elon Musk and others, you would have human controllers on the Earth as we have had with Voyager and all of these machines that have gone out into space, but that you would keep algorithmic control over what you had going to Mars that would be more in the android cyborg category, made to function in that Martian atmosphere and whatever is there to meet and be sending images and data back to Earth. So this next step, are humans going to try that 6-month or so journey in some kind of a vehicle that will launch with carbon fire or something else to Mars, with someone like Elon Musk, and do it as pure humans setting out just like on a frontier. It's romantic and exciting to think about it in one level, but Mars is a very, very harsh place in relationship to what humans are used to on Earth. So I think that Elon Musk is summing it up in both of those sentences, 2017 and 2018. Artificial intelligence could be an existential threat to the survival of humanity, ... if we do not get ourselves in control of what it can do algorithmically and autonomously. And second, for humans, mind, body, spirit, for humans to remain relevant to where Earth is moving rapidly for the rest of the 21st century, we're going to have to produce cyborgs. This is really new territory, uncharted, in some ways exciting, if all of the violent problems that humanity has with its own obsession still with tribal warfare were not there. It's as if we, Homo sapiens sapien, we have to grow up a whole lot more and a whole lot faster in order to meet all the conditions that might be on the moon and Mars, and to finally be able to stand in front of a non-human, whether they still have caverns or presences deep under the ice of Antarctica and deep under the ground of Earth, and we're cohabiting with them, and whatever other planets, moons that they may exist on. There's no question in my mind, we're not alone in this universe. We have never been alone in this universe. We've been manipulated, we've been harvested, we've been controlled, and today, as we are entering 2019, I think it is fair to say that if you look back over the last 10,000 years of Earth history, there has always been a thin, tiny percentage of something that has always been manipulating human tribalism, human evolution in the shadows. And on my t-shirt is my answer to those that control us in the shadows behind the scenes. Down with entropy. Up with light. Let's fight for it. We have souls that are worth fighting for, even if we have to move to cyborgs and androids and clones and robots to get ourselves out into space. It doesn't mean that we give up our soul and our heart on Earth. And with that, tonight, I want to thank you so much for being here, for all of you who have been writing me emails and who saw my January 23rd Part 1. May you all bring a whole bunch more people next week to Part 2, so that we begin to feel that more and more and more people are seeing real truths from people who really have facts, and we're not just all cut off by power brokers. Thanks.